Okay, let's move on to probably the most important transition company in Intel's history. That is from evolving from a memory company to a microprocessor company. And in several discussions and in the planning meeting we have a difference of opinion between our two panelists, and I have yet a third opinion. When did Intel first realize that microprocessors were a business in itself rather than just a tool to sell memory? And then, secondly, when did Intel realize that microprocessors were now the main business of the company? Ted, why don't you start, because you were first.
Well, I probably can't discuss the whole part of it, but it seemed to me that the transition started in the mid-'70s. By that time, the DRAM market had become pretty significant, and competition from Asian suppliers was becoming very significant. And so,
Meaning Japan.
Japan,
That was
primarily,
Asia.
but it was- so the situation becomes one, well, how much do we want to commit our limited fab resources to making a product that we can't make much of a profit on versus let somebody else have that business and we'll concentrate on the big money makers, which would be the microprocessors and the EEPROMs and things like that. So that seemed to me to be a sort of gradual transition that really started sometime in the mid to late 70s and just kept going.
Dave, your take, please.
It really came to a climax in the mid-'80s. Andy Grove wrote a book on that called Only the Paranoid Survive. But I took over the microprocessor. Well, I became marketing manager for microprocessors in January of '76, and general manager for that division, microprocessors and peripherals division, in January of 1978. And when I took over as general manager, the previous administration had set it up so that all memories that get sold with a microprocessor got counted as microprocessor revenue because it was drag along business.
That was pretty neat.
And I thought that that was a crutch, that it really, the business had to stand on its own. And I said I'd like to do our plan for standalone microprocessor peripheral component business. We did that starting with our fiscal year, calendar year '78. That year we did $40 million worth of revenue in microprocessors, and we lost money. The development system was much bigger. Jim Lally was running that as general manager, and that made a lot more money, and it was quite profitable.
Amazing.
But as Ted pointed out, the DRAM, we kind of got our butt kicked in the 4K on DRAM by MOSTEC. Remember the 16-pin 4K and our 22-pin 4K just never made it. And then we tried to get back in at 16K, and we were a small player at that level. We're very strong in the 1K DRAM, the 2102. We had a very high-speed MOS 4K
47.
2147. And then the EEPROM business was quite successful. So we had sort of lost the DRAM business, and then the low-cost static RAM business went away. We were attacked in the high speed, and we still were the leader in the EEPROM business. And during this time, the microprocessor business is growing by leaps and bounds, largely thanks to the development system was dragging us along. We were winning because of the tools. And I needed more resources. And in 1983 was a recession, and everything got the screws put to it. And I argued strongly that we should not be investing so much money in DRAM. So we needed to shift the development of microprocessors. And in 1985, when the company lost money for the first time as another recession as a public company, Andy writes in his book that he went into Gordon Moore's office and closed the door and said, you know, we're losing money, and when companies lose money, boards often fire the management, and bring in new management.
Oh, wow.
So what do you think the new management would do? Gordon says, you're right. We got to get out of the DRAM business.
So up until that time, did Intel still consider themselves primarily a memory company?
There was
Or was it
Intel. There was no uniformity. There was the microprocessor division versus the, well, we had a systems division and we had a memory division, and they all kind of were fighting for resources and attention. And so there was not a consensus. Certainly the DRAM Gordon was on the side of DRAM. And Gordon told me, he says, Dave, you're not going to have the process to make a leading microprocessor if we don't have the DRAMs to get the yields up. And
Wow.
that's our yield vehicle. We've got to have that device.
That drives the volume.
And I went back to him. I remember going back to a diphoto, and I said, "See this control store here? Why don't you use that? Why don't you use the memory that's on the chip to do the the yield optimization?" Because he's looking for a nice simple XY defect locator, a memory structure for locating defects. So Andy had said, if they hire new management, they're gonna get out of the DRAM business. So Andy says, why don't we just walk out the door like we quit, and then walk back in like we're the new management and act that way. And that's what Gordon said. And Andy told me this story, and he said that, and Gordon says, you're right. We're going to have to get out of the DRAM business. We can't afford to stay in the DRAM business. At that point in time, I started getting the resources I needed, and most importantly, Jerry Parker, who was in charge of technology development, started doing the things that my guys were looking for. We needed low resistance polysilicon. We needed multiple levels of metal. We started, there are a bunch of things. I'm the systems guy. I think about it from a systems standpoint. But my guys are working with Jerry, saying this is what we need. And Jerry saying, no, I got to do this for DRAMs. All of a sudden, we started getting the process steps that really let us accelerate in that business. Of course, this happens to be 1 year after. This happens to be 4 years after the IBM PC and 1 year after the IBM PC-AT, which really was the point that the PC
Well,
took.
more about that in a second, but to sum up your story, what you're saying, it was really, the transition year was 83 from memories to micros, because at that point in time, you were able to divert or redirect resources from the memory division to the microprocessor division.
And silicon process development.
And the process development for microprocessors rather than for memory.
And salespeople in the field, and engineers
Okay.
that I could hire, and
Now, next question.
advertising dollars.
Next